The black luxury SUV rolled through the busy shopping district, sunlight reflecting off its tinted windows, when everything changed in a single heartbeat. Behind the wheel sat Daniel Carter, a powerful billionaire businessman, driving his fiancée to an exclusive shopping appointment. But as the car slowed near a crosswalk, Daniel's eyes locked onto a sight that made his blood run cold. On the sidewalk ahead, his ex-wife was crossing the street, holding the hands of two identical twin boys. The boys laughed as they walked, their faces strikingly familiar. Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel. His fiancée went silent, and one terrifying thought exploded in his mind. Those kids look exactly like me. Before the story continues, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because this emotional story of love, regret, and shocking truth will stay with you until the very end. Daniel Carter had spent his entire life building control. At 39, he was one of America's most successful self-made billionaires, a man who turned risk into fortune and emotion into silence. His companies dominated tech and real estate, his name commanded respect, and his future was carefully planned. Sitting beside him in the passenger seat was Sophia Reynolds, his fiancée, beautiful, confident, and perfectly polished for the life of a billionaire's wife. They were on their way to shop for custom wedding outfits, laughing moments earlier, discussing colors and guest lists. "I still can't believe you grew up in this city," Sophia said casually, adjusting her sunglasses. "It feels so normal." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's why I left." The traffic light turned red, forcing the SUV to slow. That was when Daniel saw her. Emily Carter, the woman he once loved before the money, before the power, before ambition hardened his heart. She looked different now, older, more tired, but unmistakably her. And beside her were two small boys, no older than 6, holding her hands as they stepped onto the crosswalk. Daniel's breath caught painfully in his throat. The boys had his dark hair, his sharp jawline, his eyes. His world tilted. Sophia noticed his sudden silence. "Daniel?" she asked. "Why did you stop?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes were glued to the twins as they crossed the street. One of the boys laughed loudly, the sound hitting Daniel like a memory he never lived but somehow recognized. His heart began to race uncontrollably. Emily looked up. Their eyes met. Her face drained of color instantly. She stopped walking, tightening her grip on the boys' hands as if instinctively protecting them. For a moment, the noise of the city disappeared. There was only shock, fear, and 7 years of buried truth standing between them. Daniel opened the car door and stepped out without realizing it. The door slammed shut behind him. "Daniel," Sophia said again, stepping out after him, confusion creeping into her voice. He crossed the street slowly, his legs heavy, his chest tight. "Emily," he said quietly, his voice barely steady. She swallowed hard. "You shouldn't be here," she replied, her voice soft but firm. The twins stared at Daniel with open curiosity. One tilted his head slightly. "Mom," he asked innocently, "who is that man?" The word mom sliced through Daniel's chest. He crouched slightly, lowering himself to their level. His hands trembled. "How old are they?" he asked, though every part of him already knew the answer. Emily hesitated, then answered, 6. 6. The number echoed violently in Daniel's mind. 6 years ago was when he signed the divorce papers. 6 years ago was when he chose expansion deals over family. 6 years ago was when Emily disappeared from his life without explanation, and he never asked why. Sophia walked closer now, her voice tight, controlled. "Daniel," she said slowly, "you never told me you had children." "I didn't know," he replied hoarsely, his eyes never leaving the boys. He stood and faced Emily. "Why didn't you tell me?" Emily's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained calm. "You told me you didn't want anything holding you back," she said quietly. "You said kids would ruin everything you were building. I chose to raise them without resentment and without begging." One of the twins smiled at Daniel, shy and innocent. That single smile shattered something deep inside him. He had everything money could buy, yet he stood there realizing he had missed 6 years of bedtime stories, first words, and first steps. Sophia crossed her arms, her perfect future suddenly uncertain. "So what happens now?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes were fixed on the twins, the living proof that the life he walked away from had grown without him. And in that moment, Daniel Carter finally understood something terrifying. You can run from the past, but you can never outrun the truth. Daniel stood frozen in the middle of the crosswalk, the noise of the city slowly returning around him, but inside his mind there was only silence. Cars honked impatiently. People stared, yet all he could see were the two little boys holding Emily's hands. They shifted their weight, sensing the tension, their innocent faces unaware that their entire lives had just collided with a man who shared their blood. Daniel straightened slowly, forcing himself to breathe, but his chest felt painfully tight. Emily was the first to move. "We should go," she said softly to the boys, trying to step past him. "Wait," Daniel said quickly, panic creeping into his voice. "Please, just a minute." Emily hesitated. Years ago, that voice could still her anger instantly. Now, it only stirred memories she had worked hard to bury. She looked down at the twins. "Go stand by the bench," she said gently. "I'll be right here." The boys obeyed, sitting a few steps away, swinging their legs, whispering to each other. Sophia approached, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. "I think I deserve an explanation," she said, looking between Daniel and Emily. Daniel nodded slowly. "Sophia, this is Emily, my ex-wife." Sophia's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Ex-wife?" she repeated. Her gaze shifted to the twins. "And those are my sons," Emily said quietly before Daniel could speak. The words landed like thunder. Sophia inhaled sharply. "Your sons?" She turned to Daniel. "Is that true?" Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. Honesty felt heavier than any lie he'd ever told. "I don't know," he said finally. "But yes, they could be." Sophia took a step back, crossing her arms tightly. "You're telling me that on the day we go wedding shopping, I find out you might have two children you never mentioned?" "I didn't know," Daniel said again, his voice strained. "I swear." Emily watched the exchange quietly, her face unreadable. "I didn't tell him," she said. "That part is on me." Daniel turned to her sharply. "Why?" His voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me, Emily? I had a right to know." She met his gaze, her eyes steady despite the tears gathering in them. "You had already chosen your life," she said. "You told me you didn't want children. You said you didn't want anything that would slow you down. You walked away without looking back. I wasn't going to chase you with a pregnancy." The words burned because they were true. Daniel remembered the arguments, the long nights, the way he always chose meetings over dinners. Back then, success felt urgent. Family felt optional. Sophia exhaled slowly. "So what now?" she asked. "Are we just standing here pretending this isn't happening?" Daniel looked toward the twins. One of them noticed and waved again, smiling. Daniel felt something inside him break. "I want to know them," he said quietly. "I need to know the truth." Emily stiffened. "They're not a business deal you can investigate," she said firmly. "They're my children. They might be mine too," Daniel replied, not raising his voice. "And if there's even a chance they are, I won't walk away again." Sophia laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "This is unbelievable," she said. "Daniel, our engagement, our wedding, does any of that still matter to you right now?" Daniel hesitated. That pause said more than any answer could. Sophia's jaw tightened. "I see," she said quietly. Emily turned back toward the boys. "We're leaving," she said. "This isn't the place for this conversation." Daniel stepped forward instinctively. "Please, just give me your number. I'm not asking to disrupt their lives. I just want a chance to do this the right way." Emily studied him for a long moment. She searched his face for the man she once loved, and for the man who had broken her heart. Finally, she reached into her purse, pulled out a small piece of paper, and wrote something down. She handed it to him without touching his hand. "For their sake," she said. "Not yours." Daniel nodded, gripping the paper like it was something fragile. "Thank you." Sophia watched silently as Emily walked back to the bench and took the twins' hands. As they walked away, one of the boys looked back again, curiosity shining in his eyes. Daniel lifted his hand slightly, unsure, and the boy waved back enthusiastically. When they were gone, Sophia turned to Daniel. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were cold. "I need time," she said, "because I don't know how to marry a man whose past just walked back into his life with two children." Daniel didn't stop her when she returned to the car. He couldn't. His mind was already somewhere else, 6 years back and 6 years ahead. As the SUV pulled away, Daniel stood alone on the sidewalk, staring at the piece of paper in his hand. Two names were written there: Ethan Carter, Noah Carter, his last name, his son's names. And in that moment, Daniel Carter realized that the hardest negotiation of his life was about to begin, not in a boardroom, but in his heart. The rest of the day passed like a blur for Daniel. Shopping with Sophia felt surreal. Every boutique, every luxury item, every conversation a reminder that his carefully built life was crumbling behind the polished windows of the SUV. Sophia kept her distance, scrolling through her phone, her lips pressed in a tight line. Daniel tried to focus on her words when she spoke, but his mind kept returning to the two little boys, their innocent laughter, and the way they had mirrored him in every tiny gesture. It was a shock unlike anything he had ever faced in boardrooms or high-stakes negotiations. Money couldn't fix this. Influence couldn't fix this. Only truth could. By the time they returned to his penthouse, Daniel could no longer ignore the gnawing weight in his chest. He paced the living room, the piece of paper in his hand. The names of his sons burned into his memory. Ethan, Noah, 6 years old. 6 years he had never seen, never held, never guided. He sank into the leather sofa, feeling the hollow ache of regret settle deep in his bones. Sophia sat across from him, still composed but clearly frustrated. You can't just disappear into your thoughts forever, Daniel. We have plans, commitments. Our life is moving forward. And you're sitting here thinking about children you just found out about? I didn't know, Daniel said, his voice quiet but firm. I swear, I had no idea. But now I do. And I can't ignore it. Not now. Sophia looked at him like he had grown a second head. You can't ignore it, she repeated. Daniel, you're engaged to me. You're supposed to be thinking about us, our wedding, our future. And suddenly, you want to chase some ghosts from the past. They're not ghosts, Daniel snapped, his frustration rising. They're my sons, and I need to do this right. I can't, won't, walk away again. Sophia's eyes widened. Your sons? You don't even know if they're yours yet. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had been expecting this pushback. He had been expecting disbelief, anger, even judgment. But he hadn't expected the pounding guilt that rose in him at her words. She was right. He didn't have proof yet. He had only the look in their eyes, the features on their faces, the echo of his own laugh in their voices. But deep down he knew. I'll get proof, he said firmly. DNA, whatever it takes. But Sophia, you need to understand something. If there's even a chance they're mine, I have to do this. I have to try. Sophia exhaled sharply, her patience thinning. You really are willing to risk everything. For what? A possibility? Daniel leaned forward, gripping the edge of the sofa. Yes, for them. Not me. Not the money. Not the wedding. Them. I walked away once, Sophia. I can't do that again. Not if I have a second chance. The next morning, Daniel called Emily. His voice was steady, calm, though inside he was boiling with anticipation. Emily, I want to do this right, he said. I want to meet Ethan and Noah, spend time with them. I need to know them. And I need a DNA test. To be sure. There was silence on the line. Then Emily spoke, measured, cautious. Daniel, I don't know if they're ready. And neither am I. You disappeared once. You can't just show up and expect things to be easy. I won't make the same mistakes, he said quietly. I promise. I just need a chance. For them. Please. Finally, after a long pause, Emily sighed. All right, but we do this on my terms. No drama, no interference. You meet them. You prove that you're serious. And if the test comes back, then we'll talk. Daniel agreed immediately. He hung up the phone and took a deep breath, staring out at the skyline. The city sparkled beneath him, but the lights felt cold compared to the warmth he imagined in the boys' smiles. The thought of holding them, teaching them, protecting them, it filled him with a mix of fear, excitement, and desperation. That afternoon, he returned to Emily's neighborhood, this time on foot, blending into the quiet streets. He carried a small bag of toys, nothing extravagant, just simple things to make the boys laugh. Emily met him at the gate, her expression guarded. Don't expect them to warm up immediately, she warned. They're shy with strangers. Daniel nodded. I understand. I want to be here, even if it's slowly. The twins peeked around the corner of the porch. Ethan and Noah. Their dark eyes locked on him, curious but cautious. Daniel knelt down slowly, keeping his movements gentle. Hi guys, he said softly. I'm Daniel. I think we might be family." The boys blinked at him, uncertain. Then Ethan stepped forward, slowly, and handed him a small toy truck. Noah followed, holding a tiny action figure. Daniel's chest tightened so much he thought he might break. "Thank you," he whispered, tears threatening his eyes. "This means so much." Emily watched from the porch, her heart torn between caution and hope. She had spent 6 years protecting these children from a past that had no room for mistakes. But now, maybe, just maybe, this man could be different. Maybe he had changed. Daniel spent the afternoon on the porch, reading stories, playing with the boys, and learning their little quirks. Laughter began to fill the space, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt whole, not because of money, not because of power, but because of something he had almost lost forever: family. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel had a new determination. The DNA test would come back positive, he was certain of it. And if it did, he would face whatever challenges lay ahead: Sophia, Emily, the world. Nothing would stop him from being the father he had failed to be before. The morning of the DNA results felt heavier than any boardroom meeting Daniel had ever faced. He sat in his penthouse office, the city sprawling beneath him, his hands wrapped tightly around a coffee mug he hadn't touched. Every second felt like an hour. Ethan and Noah, the boys he had just met yesterday, were out in Emily's backyard. Their laughter carried faintly through the phone as Emily texted updates. Daniel's heart ached and raced at the same time. He had spent 6 years building walls around himself, walls that money, power, and control had cemented. But one look at those boys, and those walls were crumbling. Finally, the courier arrived, delivering a small envelope stamped with the name of the testing center. Daniel tore it open with shaking hands, ignoring the leather-bound phone call from Sophia that was already blinking on the screen. He pulled out the results. His eyes scanned the page, each word striking like lightning. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Daniel froze. His chest tightened. The words were simple, clinical, scientific, but their weight was impossible to measure. He was a father. Not just in theory, not just in possibility, he was a father. His sons existed. The little boys he had barely spoken to, barely touched, were his blood, his legacy, his responsibility. The rush of emotions was overwhelming: joy, fear, guilt, and a desperate longing all tangled into one. He dropped the paper onto the desk and ran a hand over his face. Images of their little smiles, their shy waves, the tiny toy truck Ethan had given him yesterday, all flashed in his mind. Daniel had made mistakes in the past. He had walked away when he should have stayed. But this time, he promised himself he wouldn't let anything or anyone pull him away from his children. Before he could sit in his own thoughts too long, Sophia's text buzzed again. It was short and sharp: "We need to talk now." Daniel exhaled and called her immediately. The video link connected, and her face appeared, flawless and serious as always. "Daniel, I know you got the results," she said without preamble. I need to know where we stand. Because this changes everything." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Sophia, I'm not leaving them. Not now. Not ever. Ethan and Noah are my sons. I have to be there for them, for every moment I missed." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "And what about me? What about us? You're telling me the woman you walked away from 6 years ago and the children you didn't know existed take priority over our future?" Daniel's throat tightened. "It's not about priority. It's about responsibility. About doing the right thing. I can't marry you knowing my sons are out there, needing me, and I walked away once before. I won't make that mistake again." Sophia's face hardened. "So what? You're just choosing them? After all this time, I was supposed to be your life. And now you're telling me it's over." "I'm not saying it's over," Daniel said quickly, though he knew the words were true for her. "I'm saying I have to step into their lives first. Everything else comes second." The silence on the video call was thick, suffocating. Sophia finally ended the call without another word. Daniel stared at the blank screen for a long moment, his hands gripping the edge of the desk. His heart ached, not from loss, but from the enormity of what he was about to do. Later that afternoon, Daniel returned to Emily's home. The twins were playing outside, racing toy cars across the patio. When they saw him approach, their little faces lit up. Ethan ran ahead, throwing his arms around Daniel's waist without hesitation. Noah followed, mimicking his brother, his grip just as strong. Daniel dropped to his knees, holding them both, letting the weight of the moment sink in. Emily watched quietly from the doorway, her eyes softening. She had seen so many men come and go, men who spoke about change but never acted. Daniel Carter was different. He had stepped up, not because of guilt, not because of obligation, but because he had realized that some things were bigger than ambition, bigger than money, bigger than convenience. Family was one of them. Daniel pulled back slightly, looking into their faces. "I'm your dad," he said simply. The boys stared for a moment, then nodded. It wasn't just words, they felt it. The connection was immediate, unspoken, undeniable. Over the next hour, Daniel helped the twins build a small fort in the backyard, taught them how to throw a baseball properly, and listened to their little stories about school, friends, and secret adventures. Every laugh, every question, every shy smile was a stitch in the bond he had missed for 6 years. By the time the sun began to set, Daniel realized he hadn't been this happy, or this complete, in a decade. Emily came closer, resting a hand lightly on his shoulder. "You're serious about this?" she said quietly. Daniel nodded. "More than anything. I'll do whatever it takes to be part of their lives. And this time, I won't walk away." Emily smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and cautious hope. "Then we'll take it slow. They need to see consistency, not just promises." Daniel agreed, understanding that fatherhood wasn't about dramatic gestures. It was about presence, commitment, love. And finally, he felt ready to prove that he could give his sons everything he had once denied them. Not wealth, not fame, but a father's heart. That night, as he drove home, Daniel stared out at the city lights, feeling lighter, more grounded. Sophia's place in his life had become uncertain, but one thing was crystal clear. Ethan and Noah had changed him forever. The past had returned, yes, but this time, he wasn't running from it. He was ready to fight for it. The next morning, Daniel woke before the city stirred. The penthouse felt empty, silent, almost lifeless compared to the laughter of Ethan and Noah yesterday. His phone buzzed with a message from Sophia. "We need to talk. Tonight. I want answers." He read it, feeling a mixture of dread and determination. There were no easy answers, and he knew the conversation could change everything, yet he couldn't ignore it. Not when his sons needed him. That evening, Sophia arrived at his penthouse. She wore a tailored black dress, her expression composed but tense, eyes sharp as a blade. "Daniel," she began immediately, "I need to know exactly what's happening. Are you choosing them over me?" Daniel looked at her calmly, though his heart raced. "Sophia, I'm not choosing between anyone," he said. "But my sons, Ethan and Noah, exist. They need me. I made mistakes before, and I'm not going to repeat them. I can't promise the same life we were planning without being honest about them, without being present for them." Sophia's lips pressed into a thin line. "You never told me about your past. You never mentioned the possibility of children. And now, on the eve of what we planned to be our perfect wedding, this happens. Do you realize how shocking that is?" Daniel nodded. "I know, and I understand if you're hurt, angry, even scared. But this isn't a decision about you or me. It's about my sons. And I won't abandon them again." Her eyes softened for just a second before hardening again. "So what does this mean for us?" He took a deep breath. "I don't know yet. I can't lie to you or myself. But I do know that I have to be a father. And if you can't accept that, I understand. I just need to do what's right for my children." Sophia said nothing. She turned, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor as she left, leaving Daniel alone with the weight of both his decisions and his responsibilities. The next day, Daniel returned to Emily's house. The twins were in the yard, laughing as they chased each other with toy swords. Ethan saw him first and ran straight into his arms. Noah followed, holding tightly to Daniel's hand. For the first time, Daniel felt the enormity of what he had missed and the joy of reclaiming it. Emily stood on the porch, arms crossed, her eyes studying him closely. "You have one chance to prove that you're serious," she said. "One chance to show that this isn't a fleeting curiosity, that you can commit to them, to this family." Daniel knelt down and met the twins at their level. "I promise, guys," he said softly. "I'm going to be here for you always. I can't change the past, but I can make sure the future is ours, together." Ethan's little hands found his, and Noah mirrored his brother, the innocence and trust in their gestures almost too much to bear. Daniel smiled through the lump in his throat, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He had been a billionaire, a businessman, a man who controlled empires, but now he understood that the truest form of wealth was this: the love and trust of his children. Emily stepped closer, her eyes misty. "I wasn't sure you could do this," she admitted. "I didn't know if you had changed." Daniel looked at her, steady and sincere. "I did change. I had to. I can't undo 6 years of absence, but I can be here now. And I will be. For them. For you. For our family." The boys cheered, running back and forth, dragging Daniel into their games, their laughter ringing through the backyard like music. For the first time, Daniel felt truly alive, truly complete. He had faced his past, confronted the consequences of his choices, and finally taken the first steps toward redemption. Later that evening, as he sat on the porch watching the twins play, Daniel's phone buzzed again. It was a message from Sophia. He hesitated before opening it. The words were simple: "I see. I can't stop what's right for them. Take care of your sons." Daniel smiled faintly, his heart swelling. He didn't feel victorious, because life wasn't about winning, at least not anymore. It was about love, presence, and responsibility. And for the first time in years, he knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. As the sun set over the neighborhood, Daniel Carter held both Ethan and Noah in his arms, their small bodies warm against his chest. He whispered promises he had longed to say, pledges to never leave them, to be their father, protector, and guide. He didn't have to control the world anymore. He just had to protect the ones he loved most. The past had returned to his life in the most unexpected way, but Daniel realized something important. Sometimes, the things we think we've lost forever are the very things that can save us. His empire, his wealth, his power, they were meaningless without his children. And as he looked into the trusting eyes of Ethan and Noah, he finally understood the meaning of being a father. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, tough conversations, and moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt ready. He wasn't just a billionaire anymore. He was a father. And nothing, not money, not power, not the past, could ever take that away from him again.